Okay, so welcome everybody. This is the session of the Bright Light series, and I'm going to be chatting tonight with BriAnna Simons, who's a clinical social worker, and we're going to talk about all things wellness, relationships, communication, what we can do in times of stress, especially now as we're dealing with COVID-19 and the global pandemic. These are definitely times we need to practice some self-care, and BriAnna has some really excellent tools that are not bubble baths and glasses of wine and chocolate. So it's the real hard work self-care that she's going to talk about. And as with all of the Bright Light series conversations, they're definitely to help you in this time, but they're also tools and exercises and things that you can use all the time, because there's always times of uncertainty in our business. And the purpose of the conversations is really to figure out how we can support and care for ourselves so that we can tend to our business. So BriAnna, thanks so much for joining me tonight. And can you let folks know a little bit about who you are and who you work with and where you work?
Sure. So I'm a clinical social worker, and I actually own a private practice here in Chester, and I opened it up 3 years ago. So I primarily work with children and families, but I also provide individual counseling and therapy to individuals, couples, really anyone who is struggling. I provide EAP services as well. So my practice really spans any age, and I've been touching base with a lot of parents lately with what's been happening and just getting some guidance, and even individuals, people who are older and don't have kids at home anymore, who are just experiencing changes in their life right now with everything that's going on. Right.
Yeah, I bet I can see that. Can you tell us what EAP is, just in case folks don't know?
Yeah, it's the Employee Assistance Program. So a lot of places of work actually have an EAP program, and a lot of them are through Morneau Shepell. So I do contract work with Morneau Shepell, and I'm on their list. So if anybody needs any services and they do know that they have an EAP program, then typically what happens is they make a referral to them, and then they source out somebody that's local that they can go to.
Okay, and that's sort of covered under their program at work. And
yeah.
Okay, great. Definitely worth looking into for sure. And I know you made a big switch recently to offer your services virtually.
Yes.
Seemed like a pretty quick and amazing pivot that you made to kind of deal with what's happening right now. So that's something that we obviously aren't going to your clinic and speaking with you. People just connect online like this.
Yeah. So all of my booking is online. It's been such a shift, but I feel like in ways it's beneficial, because even beyond COVID, there's people who could benefit from phone support and video support as well, who can't actually come into office. So it's been a huge change for me, because I was so used to, especially having little ones coming to my office all the time. It was kind of one session after another and seeing a lot of people in my office. And now I'm here by myself all the time. And I'm doing all of my sessions through video and phone sessions. So it's a very strange dynamic, because the environment itself is very quiet now. But it's something that even beyond this, once people start coming back to my office for sessions, I'm still going to offer phone and video-based sessions for people who need that as well.
Great. I saw a post you put on Instagram with a little setup of little toys, and you were visiting the Oakland Zoo, I think you said.
Yeah.
So you're having a session.
I've been providing a lot of parenting sessions, like parenting coaching sessions, but I do have some of the kids that I've been connected with for quite a while, and I already have that relationship established with. I have been doing more sessions with like youth and kind of like the teen age, but I have sessions with little ones too. And so it's interesting, because they have a play dynamic happening on their end, and they kind of help guide me with what I'm doing on my end. So they're playing with me still, even though they're not physically in my office. So it's really cool to be able to still do that.
It's amazing. Yeah. And I bet those parents are pretty grateful to have your services now, especially when things are so so wild right now. So I guess, you know, at the start, we talked a little bit about making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, you know, sort of putting our air mask on first so that we can help everybody else. And that's really what I was hoping this series would be helpful for people, especially when they're, you know, they're really worried. Some people are in their businesses are thriving and their businesses are, you know, they're not closed, they're not shut down, they're really, they're either pivoting or they're an essential service and they're really overwhelmed in that way where things are really busy. And then, you know, the other end of the spectrum is that people are just, they're closed, their businesses are closed and they just have no idea what's going to happen or if they're going to be able to reopen. So thinking about sort of that whole lens of how many people, how different people are experiencing this, like what would be your sort of go-to suggestions or recommendations for how can people take care of themselves? Like thinking about, you know, we talked a little bit about communication, like how we're communicating with each other is really important. And under times of stress, that can be challenging.
Yeah.
How do we look after ourselves? Like, what are some things people can do right now to tend to themselves?
I think one of the biggest things is really reflection. And because we're in this place of things are not as they were, things are not predictable. It's nothing that we're really used to. And so we're in this environment, in this state of discomfort and uncertainty. And, you know, sometimes that can be scary, but I feel like it also creates opportunity to be able to become more resourceful, to also have a stronger will for change. You know, not everybody has felt this way, but just I think as a society, we felt like there was too much, we were too busy, and, you know, everybody, even before when I was having parenting sessions, parents were like, how do we fit it all in? Like, how do we kind of manage both parents working and kids, and work and kind of everything else that we have to incorporate. And so I think being in this time right now, people are doing a lot of reflection on what things were like before and how things are feeling now. And so I would say like that's kind of a starting point to put some energy into that and not be scared of that, not be scared of doing some of that reflection, because it can create a lot of change that potentially was even necessary before all this happened, but it didn't happen because it wasn't brought to the surface. So I think just trying to use this time for self-reflection. We talk a lot about like work and workplace and how can you incorporate change into that aspect. And like you said, some businesses are doing excellent and they're expanding. Some businesses are rebranding and they're actually reflecting on where they were and maybe they feel like they weren't servicing the population in the way that they wanted to, so they're recreating what it looks like. And for other people, they're cutting some things out. I mean, even for me, there's been a shift in things that I've had thought to, but either never felt like I had the time to make the complete change or had whatever reasons for why I can't do it. And so there's things that I've done now that I've thought, you know, I wish I would have done this sooner kind of thing. And then even just bringing that reflection into people's home lives. You can reflect on your household and your family rhythm. I do a lot of work with simplicity parenting, which incorporates a lot about like your rhythm of your family and what that looks like and simplifying. And so being able to use this time to either look back on things right now don't feel good and they're not working. And so the way that they were before, what was working from that maybe we need to bring back in. There's been a lot of talk about, even though things are changed and disrupted in a sense, and people are at home, still having some type of a routine in place is really important still. So looking back on the routine that you had before, was that functional and was that working? And if there was some aspects that were, how can you kind of bring that into what's happening right now so that you can have still a sense of routine? And then if it wasn't functional and it wasn't working, what are you doing now that's feeling better, and how can you keep that going even after all this kind of starts shifting back? We can also reflect on our relationships. It can be a tricky subject for some, because I know just being in social work, there's definitely in the back of your mind thought of home life isn't great for everyone, and things can be challenging for kids or for individuals in their relationships. So I've been working with people that are also reflecting on their relationship and reflecting on, maybe things aren't as good as what I thought they were, and maybe I need to do something about that. So kind of reflecting on like the good, bad, and the ugly of things, and seeing if there's things that you need to do to reach out for support to make a shift in that way as well. And then the communication piece, I mean, that's huge, because just being caught up in the busyness of life, sometimes that can get missed. And so potentially people are spending more time with their partners than they have in quite a long time. So maybe bringing more attention to, are there areas in communication that need to be adjusted or changed now that there's more opportunity for connection? I know personally, myself and my husband, like, we often felt like it was just that rotating door. Like, I was leaving, he was coming, and we were doing the switch off with the kids, and there was like no opportunity to talk about what was happening and share things with each other. So definitely taking the opportunity to express needs and talk about how you're feeling and what's going on and how well you feel that the relationship's going, and if there's anything that you can do to kind of work on now that you're spending more time together. And
Sometimes
doing
easier,
some
sometimes easier.
self-reflection.
Sorry, sometimes easier said than done, some of these things, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Especially in stressful times.
Yeah, and it's something that, like, it's going to be a different process for everybody. It's not everybody's going to be able to do everything, and not everybody's going to sit down and be like, okay, I'm going to tick off this box, and now I'm going to move on to this, and I'm going to do that. It's something that you need to feel kind of what's happening for you in this moment, and maybe the emphasis is on like one part of your life, and that's the focus, and that's where you want to put the energy. And when we talk about the wellness and self-reflection inventory, at the end I do have a piece that talks about change, like in creating a plan for change. And so I think a lot of people have been in this mindset of, oh, everybody's acting like everyone's at home and just has all this free time to do whatever. And so there can be a sense of expectation of doing everything. And when I'm talking with parents and individuals, they're specifically talking about what is their particular distress, what is the area that they're really struggling with, and like how can they work on that one thing. So it's really teasing out what is that area for you that is going to make the biggest impact if you can make a change to it. And then once you kind of work on that, if you have the ability to move on to another thing, then you go there too. So it's just, everybody's going to be in a different place, and everybody's going to be looking at different things.
Yeah, I think that's such a great piece of advice, is to like do baby steps and think of one thing. And maybe it's not the biggest thing at that time. Like maybe it's just one thing that you can wrap your head around and you can put some energy towards, like you said. I think that's a really, really great piece of advice, because like you said, we're inundated with all of this content telling us to be productive or be reflective or write a book or knit a sweater or,
Yeah.
build a treehouse with your kids or do all these things. And, some people at some times during parts of the day or the week, like just getting up and getting dressed and eating something is kind of your thing for the day. So I think that's such great advice, is pick something that you can focus on. When you were talking about the reflection and thinking about what you've done before or what you want to take forward, I was thought of the exercise that I do with clients a lot, and it's similar, and it's usually around your business and sort of how you work in your business, and it's called just a simple exercise called Keep, Toss, Create. just
Mm.
the reflection activity, like thinking back, what do you want to keep doing? What do you want to toss or stop doing? And what do you want to create? Like, we do have an opportunity right now because things have shifted to maybe create new routines or, create time to invest in our relationships, those sorts of things.
Mm.
So I love that you talked about reflection because it's something I do all the time. And I think it's so valuable, and also just really hard to do sometimes. It's really
Yeah.
hard to pause and to slow down and do that piece of work.
I feel like for me personally, I've found more value in that recently. I'm a person who I would say is definitely more of, I need that sense of control. Like that's my security. And when things aren't able to be planned out or predicted, that creates anxiety for me. So being a person that has such structure like that, this time right now is very wacky for me, and it's kind of putting me in this place of like, okay, I don't have as much control over things as I thought I did. And so being able to reflect on that and just kind of take a step back and look at everything now, that's been a huge thing for me, to just realize there's some things that need to kind of shift and move here. And even realizing too that I think being in this profession, we definitely take on a lot of ownership for holding everything together for everybody and being present all the time. And so the fact that I've had to essentially close my door and not allow people to come here physically has created a sense of letting go in a way, because I have less control over things than what I previously thought I did. And at the same time too, life will go on and people will continue to manage with the things that they have. And so yeah, it's been a huge reflection just in general and in my business, from that perspective. So yeah, it's definitely a valuable thing for self-care and kind of moving in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of the other things that I have found has been really important for myself, but also for the parents and individuals and even the youth that I'm working with, is because we've been thrust into this shift of tech being even more important than it was, because that's kind of our only means of connecting now. It has created a problem too, because it's so exhausting and just overwhelming to feel so reliant on something and to feel like you have to stay connected to what's happening all the time. And so one of the other things that I've been talking with a lot of people about is creating like intentional breaks and pauses, and that also being like with unplugging and having dedicated times where you're not connected to what's happening virally. And it's hard because people, especially with everything that's happening with COVID, but also with what's happened in our province over the weekend, you feel a sense of like, I need to stay connected for safety. I need to know what's happening to be aware and to be prepared. But at the same time, it can actually do damage to your mental health too, to be always on and always feel like you are just being inundated with all that information. And a lot of the work that I do with parents, even with kids, is recognizing that kids don't function well with having so much content, and it even plays out in like home environments and simplifying your home. Like if a child has access to loads and loads of toys, they essentially lose the ability to play. If we go into the grocery store, we're often unable to make choices because there's so many choices to make. So we're now in a situation where we have so many avenues of connecting through social media. We have so many avenues of getting news and information and content, like it's just bombarding us. And with a lot of people, their kind of directive has been to create a time in your day or in your week where you are shutting that down, you're shutting it out, and knowing that when you turn it off, everything's going to be fine, and you're still going to be okay when you bring it back on, just to give yourself a break from that, to feel like you don't have to respond to every single noise that your phone is making. So that's been a big thing for people too. And even like youth are feeling it, like they're feeling this sense of like, I'm online for school, the only way I can connect with my friends is through online, and then I'm hearing the news and what's happening in the media because my parents are listening to it, and so it's there all the time. So yeah, just I think for everybody in the family, that's something that's definitely helpful to do.
Yeah, and again, like we talked about at the beginning, helpful when we're inundated with news and updates and changes all of the time, but also just in your regular like day-to-day life, that's not something, if you can implement that now and we're inundated with things, like can it carry that on, I keep saying when the dust settles, but like that's something that, I always, think about and, hear people talking about, is to create those spaces where you're not inundated with things all the time, going offline on the weekend, or, deleting Instagram and Facebook off your phone, even just for the weekend, and then downloading the app again during the work week or something like that. So yes, I think it's a healthy thing to do.
It's all going to be there when you come back. Like
Yes.
if you wanted to know what happened for those 2 days that you weren't on, you can easily get access to it. So there's no sense of urgency of I'm going to miss anything, because you can easily find what went on while you're away if you feel like you need to do that.
Yeah. Again, sometimes easier said than done, because they're designed and built to be addictive, right? Like
For sure.
the
Yeah.
dopamine's like whenever that like ding or little red, there's so much science and psychology that goes behind that. So I guess the other thing to recognize is that they're designed to keep your attention. They're designed for you to keep going at and looking at and refreshing all the time. So that's normal that you're feeling that way.
Yeah, it's something that, like, if anybody is into just seeing the psychology behind that, and like in really reflecting on the impact that has, um just try out going a weekend with it shut off and disconnected and tucked away in your drawer, because I did that recently just because of feeling like this sense of overload with everything being online. I just needed to take a break for the weekend. And, being in a profession, and certainly for people who have jobs that they have accountability for, like they're accountable to their clients and their customers, there's still ways that you can notify people that you're doing that. Like if you have a sense of what's going to happen if I am not available, because I'm usually available 24/7. So if you feel compelled in any way to do that and to try it out and see how it feels to just have that pause and that break, make a post or let people know. Like that's what I did, just to say, like, I'm taking a break and I'm not going to be here for a couple of days, but I will be back with you, on this day. And any questions, send them to my inbox and I'll follow up when I get back.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. When I'm talking with people who are just starting their business, I always suggest that they, when we're starting businesses and somebody emails us, we want to respond right away because we're excited and we want to serve them. But I always try to encourage people to like set the tone in the relationship with clients or customers so that you're not responding, at 10 p.m. on a Saturday evening or something. So even though you have the urge and you have the time and the desire, like there's so many different ways you can navigate that. You can write a draft, you can set it to publish at a reasonable time that you would be expected to be working. So I think that's really important in terms of setting boundaries in relationships. I just want to say there's a really great something I did on my phone. It's an iPhone, and if you tap the home button 3 times, it will go grayscale, so you don't see that color and those notifications, and it's just way less engaging. So that's something I do if I'm finding myself being distracted, is I'll just do that 3 times and then I pick it up and I don't really want to look at it. So there's lots of different hacks that you can do if you're, if you're engaged online for business or for social, to kind of distract you from it. There's lots of things you can do. I'm wondering if now would be a good time for you to show the exercise and the inventory that I have.
Sure.
And I'm going to share my screen so that folks can see it if they're watching the video, and maybe you can just talk through it in case people are looking or just listening to the conversation.
So I created this, and I've actually I've used this with a lot of people. I mean, it's interesting because we talked about how to kind of incorporate this and bring this to people in business and how it's relatable to them. But this wellness and self-reflection inventory has been used with people just regardless of what's happening in their life. It's just, it can create a sense of like a baseline of just checking in with yourself, seeing where things are at, and then using it to work from to then create change if you feel like there's anything that you need to bring some change to. Mm-hmm. I filled it out myself because I can't promote a tool or use a tool with people if I don't know how it works. So I'll go through it with people and just kind of give a sense. I don't mind sharing some of the things that I've put down as well. And then hopefully people can even just try it out and see if there's anything that was unexpected. I mean, maybe you're a very reflective person and you really have a sense of how you are, and like nothing on here is going to be surprising. But for people who haven't really done this very often, it can be something that brings light to things even afterwards. Like maybe the content that's in it isn't necessarily as significant as the thoughts that come out of it afterwards.
Right. It's a good preface.
Yeah. So the first one is just simply 3 words that describe how you're feeling right now. So for mine, and I mean, this can change like day to day as well, week to week, depending on what's happening. My 3 were unsure, optimistic, and impatient. So that's a lot to do more so like with my business than anything, but also just with being a person who has a high need for control and planning and being kind of present to all that stuff. It can be a strange situation to be in, to have no idea what's going to happen week to week. Yeah. And then below that I have how I hope to be feeling. So being able to reflect and compare the feelings that you have right now to the feelings that you hope that you have, because then that can bring light to what can you do to draw yourself back to the feelings that you actually want to be having. The kind of 2-3 that I chose was just a sense of like confidence with decisions and direction. And so like being a person in business and having your own business right now can be a time that like if you were a confident person before, you may not feel confident anymore because you don't know what this means for your business. And just even trying to like catch up with everybody else and like getting everything online, for some people that may be easier than others. And it can also bring light to that like expansive ability too, because online means so many opportunities. And then just feeling like settled and secure in just kind of everything that's happening. I'm sure a lot of people would feel that they need that feeling or want that. Mm-hmm. The next section, so the next page, yeah, you had it there. Yeah. Is how well am I sleeping? So when I'm doing like intakes, when I'm starting with individuals or even parents, the questions about how are you sleeping and how are you eating are top, because it can say a lot about a lot of different things. So on a scale of 1 to 10, rating how well you feel that you're sleeping lately, and then what I need for improved sleep. So most people have some idea of what they need in order for sleep to be going better. For a lot of people, I'm sure if you're feeling like you're not sleeping as well, it could be a sense of like not being able to shut your mind off, not sleeping, or maybe going to bed really late, not being able to sleep, or it could be that you have young kids and that's affecting sleep. So there can be a lot of aspects there. So even just writing down like 1 or 2 things that you feel could help you kind of get to that point of maybe even improving your sleep a little bit. You may not ever get to a 10, but if you can get to like an 8, that could be a significant improvement. How well am I eating? So again, just reflecting on like and this obviously can be driven a lot by emotions too, but what are the things that you're eating and how are you feeling about it? And what are some of the things that you want to be bringing into your eating habits more so? One of the things that I put down was I'd like to be eating more fresh fruit and vegetables. And part of the reason is there's been a shift in groceries. So now, grocery pickup is happening like 2 weeks after you put in the order. So one of the things that I'm kind of setting as a goal for myself is just like, as the weather is getting nicer, wanting to source out and connect with local farmers and people who are growing food to support local economy, but also to have access to more fresh fruit and vegetables and not have to be dependent on the grocery store pickup.
Yes.
So just stuff like that. And so then at the bottom of that first page there is, how is my time being spent? So this is like typical pie chart. It doesn't have to be totally accurate down to the percentages to get you exactly to 100, but even if you can kind of visually map it out, write down kind of what areas you feel are taking up most of your time, and then figuring out like visually, being able to see it on a paper can help you kind of see it, I guess, more realistically, because maybe you're not bringing as much attention to what it's really looking like. For mine, I definitely have a larger piece of the pie that is TV and screens than I would like to have. Lots of binge watching of Netflix, and I could think of all kinds of things that I could be doing instead of that. And not to say that that's a bad thing. I mean, people definitely need to numb out sometimes, especially with everything that's happening. So there's nothing wrong with sitting down at the end of the day and binge watching your favorite TV show, but just looking at that and like, if you're content with the amount of time that you're spending watching TV and on screens, like that's fine. It's just more of looking at, are there tweaks that you want to kind of make with what that looks like? So then that's what the next one is just recreating that pie chart in the way that, like, ideally if things could be sectioned out in a way that makes more sense for you or that you would want to have, what would that look like? And so mine, there's just, it was more like small shifts, just trying to add more to other areas, wanting to kind of bring, for me, socializing. I am more of an introvert, and so I haven't been putting a whole lot of time on socializing. I mean, there's been the connections through text and stuff like that, but if it's something that, looking ahead, if this is going to be something that we're going to be experiencing for a couple more months, I'm sure nobody wants to admit that that's a possibility, but if it is, maybe reflecting on relationships and thinking, what are things that I could do to maintain the relationships that are important to me, the ones that aren't just within your household, but that go beyond that. And so if that's an area that you feel like you want to beef up, I know one of the kids that I connect with, that's one of the things that they were saying, is that there's been such a shift in everyone else that, like, some friends and some people are kind of like withdrawing and pulling back, and so they're not able to connect with them as much. And so looking at that, if you feel like there's some friends that you're not as connected to now, but you would like to stay connected with them and create something with them that maybe looks a little bit different, looking at what can you actually do to draw that relationship back in during this time. So it's just, this pie chart is just to kind of look at that and look at, are there little changes that you can make? And then at the bottom, just some ways I can adjust my time so that it's more reflective of how I ideally want to spend it. So even just putting down a couple points there of small things that you might be able to do or tweak. And then the next page Top challenges that I'm experiencing right now. There's space for 5. You may have 2, you may have 1, or you may have 10 of them. So you can put whatever makes sense for you. And so with that, you have top challenges. If you have some ideas of ways that you feel like you could kind of help those areas or start working towards making those things a little bit better, you can jot down those ideas right beside it. And then down below, things I'm thriving at. I think a lot of people are being probably harder on themselves than what they need to be right now. I think everybody, it's a strange situation because we're kind of like a month and a half into this now. And I think initially I even experienced this when I first put out my my emails and messages to people to say, this is what's happening. I'm going to be going online. If you want to book a session, you can. Initially, a lot of people were saying, oh, we'll just wait until we can come back and see you in person, thinking that this was going to be a short-term thing, and they wanted to do the thing that was most comfortable for them. But I think after a solid month and hearing that this could go even beyond, people are like, oh, like this isn't something that I can maintain with that kind of connection. So I think people are starting to now have this all settle in a little bit more. And so I think just not putting the same expectations on yourself now as what you had then, because you can't do it in the same way. People are providing school for their kids and they're working at home and they're still doing everything else at home. And so you can't fit that all in the same way. It's not structured the same. And so you can't have the same expectations for accomplishing the things in the same way that you did. So just giving yourself a little credit for even just surviving and getting through this shift in such a quick amount of time that everybody's had to adjust. So there's probably a lot of things, and maybe you've thought about them, but maybe you haven't, that you actually are thriving at and you actually are doing really well with, or even being surprised at how quickly people could pull together a completely different way of living could be a thing that you put on there.
I love the language that you used. I know, in the content we're consuming online, there's a lot of people sharing about what they're grateful for right now. And I think there's a huge benefit in that practice. I love that you are really clear about, identifying and reflecting on what I'm doing really well at.
Yeah.
I love that that's so boldly stated, because, we don't often take time to process that or to think about that. So I love that you wrote down.
Yeah.
You have it, you're sort of giving people a permission to kind of express what they are thriving at, and just the very practice of thinking about that, I think is pretty powerful.
Yeah. And it's interesting because what I'm seeing is people that were feeling like their life was moving along pretty well, then shifted into this sense of not being super confident and kind of struggling a little bit. But people who were feeling like their life was kind of here, there, and everywhere now are feeling like, wow, I got this now. So there's even that dynamic that's playing out. So even just being aware of that, like what are the areas that you are doing really well with? And if there's areas that you're struggling with now, but you were doing well with before, how can you bring that back into your life now? And then the last part, things I've learned about myself and others during this time. So just jotting down anything that you've learned about yourself during this time. It's easy to not really think about what we learn about ourselves on a day-to-day, month-to-month, or year-to-year time, because everything's just trucking along. And so you don't really think about it. But in a lot of situations, we're learning about ourselves all the time in our experiences. So just taking the time to think about, like, what is this current experience doing for me or doing to me? And what have I learned about myself with that? For me, I mean, I've always known that I was an introvert. even though you would think that I wouldn't be, being in the profession of having to work with people all the time. But I think I've realized that I'm even more comfortable than I thought I would be, because this kind of shift of everything being shut down and being home, it feels comfortable to me, and it's strange to feel that way, especially when you know that other people are really struggling. And another thing that I've learned too, though, is, you know, I'm in a circumstance where I am an essential service, but I am a solopreneur, so I don't have any employees or anyone, so I can keep my office open and still come here. Um, and luckily for me, because I'm sure a lot of people wish they still had that, for me, I've realized that I need that. Like, that's actually something that I need in my life. Like, that's my mental health. So just reflecting on that kind of stuff can even help people to realize, like, is there something that I need to somehow find a way to bring back into my life so that I can get through the next couple months. And then the other section of just like reflecting on things that you've learned about others, like maybe you've learned things about your partner. I've had individuals that I've connected with that are like, they're realizing, because this is, you know, it's a circumstance that's very much like grief and loss. Sometimes you don't realize aspects of a person's personality until they're in a situation of high stress and loss. And so people are sharing with me aspects of their partners that they never really realized was there, or they're realizing that they deal with things in a very different way, and so that's creating a dynamic that they have to reflect on. So what is that you're learning about other people around you, and just kind of being able to reflect on that and see it for what it is. I mean, just because you need this or you handle this in this way and your partner is seeming to shut down and deal with it in a different way, where they were a very outgoing person before, it's not to say that they're in the wrong for how they're doing it. It's just that's how they need to do it right now, and maybe using that as a talking point to be able to have conversations about how can you support each other would be a good start.
Right.
And then the last page there is the change making process. So it's pretty simplified. I mean, the work that I do, there's times that I'm working with people for months at a time. Sometimes I'm on and off with people for years. So this is not to oversimplify that change can be a big deal for some people, but change can also start in small pieces as well. So I tried to create something that makes sense, that people can actually do at home, and they can use as a format to do at home. So the first one is just starting out with that strength, like finding a strength, what things are going well for me, what things are going well for my family right now. So just right off the bat, recognizing like, where are we at? What's good for us right now? And how are we doing? Because then too, when you're going through the rest of it, you can use those strengths to be able to draw into how to support you when you're actually moving through the things that are challenging. The next one is just identifying the dissatisfaction or distress. So what's bothering you in your life right now? Reflecting on family relationships. Is there shared dissatisfaction? Is the family struggling? Are you and your partner struggling with one thing in particular? And just kind of jotting that down. And this isn't to kind of map out every single distress that you have, because that's going to be overwhelming. Just start with the one that kind of like pops into your mind first, or feels the most heavy, and start with that one first. And then the next part is taking the time, so intentionally being present to that that distress, and then imagining things being better. And I've done this with people in a lot of different ways, even just with things as simple as simplifying their household. If you can't visualize the change happening, you're not necessarily going to believe that it can happen. So taking the time to imagine what it would look like, what would it feel like, how would it impact yourself and everybody else around you, um, and potentially like what could the domino effect be of that change. So just really sitting with those feelings and thinking about it and imagining what it would feel like can bring a sense of motivation too to continue on with that change. Um, and then the next one is designing. So you're going to be designing a small doable change. What are the first steps of what you need to do? If it's a big thing, what's one part of that big thing that you can pick away at? And just jotting down what that looks like, what it would take you or what it would take others around you that are also part of that process, to move in that direction. And then the next one is like doing it, fulfilling and acting that change. So having discussions, that's when a lot of times if there's family changes that are happening that are going to be impacting kids as well, I always encourage, regardless of age, like even if the kids are 2 or 3 years old, have a family sit down and just talk about, have you noticed that this has been happening, and I've been feeling this, and I've been noticing that you've been feeling this, and like, let's talk about that, because let's start to create a sense of change that we can all be a part of. If you start to make a change that's going to impact your kids and you don't tell them about it, it's not going to go well. So just drawing in anybody that is going to be a part of that change so that everybody has a sense of like what's going to be taking place going forward.
I can see that also being helpful in staff teams, especially right now, right? When employers are looking for ways to engage their staff. Maybe they're not at work right now. Maybe they're having, I know a lot of teams are having weekly Zoom calls. So, this is definitely an exercise that could be used in a staff team, right? Like thinking about where they want to go in the future, if their business is closed right now, or if they're needing to make decisions around changes. Like I could see this process working really well with a staff team.
Yeah, for sure. And even just like, that's where you would lay out like what roles are people taking on, and kind of how are we going to check in on it and see how it's moving forward. And then the last one is the celebration. Like a lot of times we do things and we make changes and then we just move on to the next one. Like take the time to actually celebrate doing that.
Yes.
And you can also celebrate the failures too, because those tend to bring the next change to come about, or it makes you realize like this wasn't the way to do it, and now we know the best route to take. So there's a lot of things that you can celebrate, not only just the successes but also what you've learned from those different experiences as well.
Yeah.
And then being able to celebrate it is going to motivate you to just feel accomplished and to feel like you can go forward and continue to do more. So it's just a way to like start getting that going. For some people, they either don't have access to, or they don't feel like they have the ability or time to seek out a professional to help guide them through this stuff. So it's definitely something that you can start shifting and moving with some things on your own as well, to be able to start moving in that process.
That's great. I think this is we talked at the beginning about just taking it step by step. I think we laid this little workbook out in a way that, for some of us that we may go through this in an evening. For some of us, we may just take, a piece of it and reflect on it like maybe once a week or whenever we have time or the energy to do it. So I like the way you broke it up into easy, actionable tasks that you can take on when you feel like you can.
Yeah,
that's great. I'm just gonna unshare the screen here. And so folks that are watching the video will be able to see this. Are you able to, you'll be able to share this with folks through your website as well?
Yeah, I'll post it on my website, but I'll also post it on my Facebook page. Okay. And they can get access to it there.
Yeah, and I'll definitely make sure to put a link to it as well. Any other thoughts as folks kind of leave the conversation and kind of go forward and maybe take some of this advice or some of these actions and exercises into their day-to-day?
I think I know it's a lot of information, and I always say to people at the end of a session, like, sometimes it can be heavy. Like, sometimes there can be a lot of things talked about and a lot of plans kind of put in place. So this isn't meant to be like add something more to your plate. This is meant to be, these are some ideas of ways that you can start moving to reflect on what's happening for you. I mean, if we completely shut down the emotions that we're having and don't acknowledge what's taking place, it can create like a lot more anxiety. It can create a lot more sense of where do I go next? So this is just to start to kind of break some of that down a little bit, to start opening it up to the opportunities that you have to start processing it. And you don't have to do it all at once.
Yeah.
You don't have to reflect on your work, your household, your relationship, yourself, like all at once. Pick one piece of it and just start wherever you're feeling like it's having the most pressure and stress on your life. And I mean, you can watch this video multiple times, do one step at a time. So it's not meant to overwhelm people even more. It's meant to just kind of bring to light that, like, we have a lot going on, and work at it at the pace that you have.
Yeah, I think that's really, yeah, that's great advice. I think for now, and again for always, whenever we're dealing with big things or change or uncertainty, is just it's important to work through it and to acknowledge how we're feeling and things that we can control. So I think that's a great place to end tonight, is sort of take what control you can find and work through it as you had the energy in the space to.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And if anybody, I know things can be challenging for people in different ways, especially in relationships and stuff. So if anybody that is watching this video feels like they need something more in regards to the relationship reflection piece, or if they have questions about potentially like abusive situations, they can send me a message on Facebook, on my Facebook page, and just say, looking for extra material from your Zoom call.
Okay.
That's all they need to say, so that it's discreet, and just provide me with your email, and I can send, I have another kind of like worksheet type thing that's more about relationship reflection and has some content about, I guess, looking, is my relationship an abusive relationship? And then I can also send some resources for that too. So I just want to put that out there too, because I mean, there's lots going on for people. So if that's something that they need extra support with, they can send me that message as well.
Yeah, and on that note too, there's an excellent resource in the province, and it's 211. So it's an incredible resource of up-to-date supports and systems in the province that you can access as well. And you can do it on your phone, on the website. You can call anytime and kind of explain any situations, and they know what's happening, in the broad scope of everything that you might need in any time of the year.
Yeah, a lot of people are disconnected from their regular resources, like especially the schools, like guidance counselors provide a lot of resources for families. And if you're not going to appointments that you usually would, or even family doctors. So if people are feeling like they need extra support and resources now, you can reach out to me, or you can reach out to 211 and get whatever information you need to guide you in that way.
And just so folks know, if they just search on Facebook, what's the best way for them to find you on Facebook?
BriAnna Simons Therapeutic. They'll find me that way, and they can send me a message, and it will go to my messenger on that. And they can also email me too. My email is BriAnna, BriAnna.J.Simons, SIMONS @gmail.com. And I mean, I have so many resources on so many different things. So even if they're just like, hey, I'm wondering if you have any resources on this topic area, I can certainly send off some stuff.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time tonight and sharing so many words of wisdom for everybody that they can take certainly now and going forward. And I know that you're also on Instagram and you share a lot of interesting posts over there as well, so folks can find you there too. And you have a website and a book coming out as well. So
yes, I have a book coming out. Don't know what's happening with the publishing. I've been told that all of the print shops are shut down right now. So it's in the formatting stage. Like they're doing the layout for what it looks like in the book, and then they're sending it off to printing. So I'm not sure exactly what timelines look like, but my fingers are really crossed for summer, really crossed for summer. But if that doesn't happen, I hope that it's out for fall. So yeah, I'm really excited for that to be coming out. And I mean, especially now that people, they don't have all the connections, I'd love to get books in people's hands so they can start reading a lot of this stuff too. So
great. So folks can follow along on your social channels to see when that's going to happen. You'll let us know, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you again so much. And we continue this series tomorrow with Laurie Cook, who's going to talk all about innovation and leadership and scenario planning. So I hope everyone can join on those. These calls will be recorded, so you can check them out later as well. All right. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem. See ya.
Bye.